built a pair of sports cars that are just about perfect. Improving on them is going to be near enough impossible.
That's exactly the problem Porsche has given itself. The original Cayman GT4 and the previous Boxster Spyder, they were both so brilliantly judged and so perfectly executed that they really didn't have any significant flaws. So where on earth does Porsche go from there?
These are the new models, the 718 Cayman Gt4 and Boxster Spyder. They're faster, more powerful, grippier, more expensive, but are they actually better to drive? We've got Knock Hill in Scotland and some of the country's best roads on which to find out.
This look is why Knock Hill is good, because you get stunning views like this one right from the edge of the circuit. I can tell you, you don't get scenery like that near Rockingham. Anyway, the car, 718 Cayman Gt4. Now the first thing to say is that this car and the 718 Boxster Spyder, its sister car, they're now identical beneath the skin. Same powertrain, same chassis, same suspension settings, it's all the same. There are only two key differences, clearly the roof, but also the spoiler at the back. This car, the Cayman, has got a big fixed wing. The Spyder has got a deployable one that comes up at about 75 miles per hour. The point is, the Spyder therefore has much less aerodynamic downforce than the Cayman does. Aero is one of the big ways in which the Cayman GT4 has taken a step on over the previous one. This new model produces 50% more downforce, crucially, with no more drag. That's really clever. That's mostly because the rear wing is more efficient, but also there's a functional diffuser at the back which actually works. And that is good, clean, efficient aerodynamic downforce. Like before, the front suspension is borrowed from the 911 GT3. Rear suspension is new and bespoke for the new 718 Cayman GT4. This car doesn't have them, but you can of course get Porsche carbon ceramic brakes. This has just got the steels. New wheel design, they look very familiar from the previous car, but they're tweaked slightly, sharper edges around here. They look fantastic. They're also ever so slightly lighter, still on Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres. They're fantastic tyres. They've come on such a long way. You get amazing grip in the dry, and they're still actually really effective in the wet, which is so good for a track day tyre. The suspension, just like before, is adjustable, so you can fiddle with it. You can do the toe and camber, you can do the ride height. Also, the anti-roll bars front and rear have 3 different settings, so you can fiddle with those and get the balance of the car exactly the way you like it. Now we need to address the weight. It weighs 1,420 kilograms. That's about 30 kilos more than the previous Cayman GT4. That's because of the slightly bigger engine. That's because it's got gasoline particulate filters, cover other bits and pieces. But crucially, if you're comparing the spec sheet of the previous Cayman GT4 to this one, you're going to think it's put on something like 100 kilograms. It hasn't actually. The rules have just changed in how car manufacturers have to quote these weights. It used to be that they could quote the lightest possible derivative. Now they can't do that. So it looks on paper like the latest Cayman GT4 is much heavier. It's really not. 30 kilograms is negligible. Engine, that's some more big news on this 718 Cayman GT4, and it's a new one. 4 litre, flat 6, normally aspirated. It's kind of derived from the 3 litre twin turbo engine that you find in the 911, but you talk to the Porsche guys and they tell you there are almost no carryover parts, so it's really a bespoke development. We're going to see this engine elsewhere in the Porsche lineup. They're not telling us where yet, but they haven't built this thing just to use it in this car and in the Spyder as well. It revs to 8,000 RPM, 420 horsepower, 310 pound-foot of torque, linked of course to a 6-speed manual gearbox with a throttle blip that you can turn on and off at the press of a button. They're not confirming it yet, but we're sure that there will eventually be a PDK option for this car, but for the time being it's just manual only. Porsche quotes a 0-62 time of 4.4 seconds, 187 miles per hour flat out, Nürburgring time. It'll do a 7-minute 28. 2 things to say about that. That's 12 seconds faster than the previous Cayman GT4. It's also 4 seconds faster than the Carrera GT. That's just amazing, isn't it? 4 seconds faster than the Carrera GT. A huge part of that will be down to these new tyres. The tyre technology has come on such a long way since 2004 when the Carrera GT was new. But even so, for this thing to be quicker than the Daddy, I just think that's so impressive. Let's have a quick poke around the interior. Now, if you're familiar with the cabin of the previous Cayman GT4, there are no surprises in here, really. It's pretty much carried over, a few different details here and there, but it's much the same. The architecture is basically as it was, which is fine really. It's just a very functional, really well built, and actually for a two-seat mid-engine car, quite spacious interior. Works really well. Love the Alcantara steering wheel, love the seating position, it's fantastic. Perfect little stumpy gear lever here, that's really great. This car has got the optional Club Sport package, which includes fire extinguisher down here, also the half roll cage in the back. You can get a harness on the driver's side as well. We don't have it today. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good, solid, functional cabin this. It's not a showstopper. It just works really well. Now the price is £75,348, which is several £1,000s more expensive than the previous car, but actually still good value for money. If Porsche wanted to, I reckon they could charge a six-figure sum for this car and people would still lap it up. At £75,000, I think it's pretty decent value for money.
Porsche says you'll want the Cayman Gt4 for the track and the Boxster Spyder for the road. So that's exactly what we're doing. Here's the big question. Has Porsche somehow made the Cayman Gt4 and Boxster Spyder even better to drive? First up, let's get out on circuit.
And what a circuit it is. It's short, not much more than a mile, but it packs everything into that mile and a bit. It's fantastic. You've got a couple of totally unsighted, completely blind corners where you just have to trust that the track is still there, and it always is. Some ballsy quick corners, fiddly little sequences, and then massive elevation change as well. It's superb. How about this new 718 Cayman Gt4? It feels great. It's fantastic, this little thing. Immediately, it has a much lighter clutch pedal than the previous Cayman Gt4, lighter steering as well. So right away, it feels like a less aggressive sort of car, less highly strung kind of thing. I'm not necessarily sure it's a good thing out on circuit. Presumably, day to day out on the road, that will mean it's a more amenable kind of car. But we're on track at the moment. Balance, that's what this car's got to spare. It feels so beautifully balanced. You just have faith in the front end and the rear end. You feel the grip down the side of the car the moment you turn into a corner. It's so transparent. It's such an easy car to read. I'm in the firmer damper mode. It just gives you slightly sharper responses, slightly tauter body control. When you come up over the crest, the body doesn't float so much. When you land into compression, the chassis regains its composure that much quicker. I'm using the throttle blip as well. You can turn it off at the press of a button. I like it, I think it's great. Particularly on a busy circuit like this one, I like having the throttle blip on. I probably shouldn't admit to that, but there we go, I like it. Brake pedal, good, solid brake pedal, not rock hard. Feel some brake pedals. Steering, it's not particularly full of life. It's not wriggling around in my fingertips at all, but it's so accurate. It's so easy to position the car. It's such natural rate of response. It's fantastic. Really good grip, mega turning grip. This car's got adjustable anti-roll bars, three-way adjustable, so you can fiddle with the balance if you want to. At the moment, there's just a little margin, a little window of understeer on the way into a corner. I'm sure you could dial that out by fiddling with the anti-roll bars. But balance, the body control, the agility, it just feels fantastic, this chassis. Engine, so this is the new 4-litre normally aspirated engine. It feels pretty similar to the old 3.8 in the previous Cayman Gt4, which is no bad thing. Really sharp response, good power and torque, revs beautifully all the way up to 8,000 RPM. It just doesn't have that ferocity, the intensity that you get from a full 911 GT3 engine. That's to be expected, but it's still a really wonderful engine. Sounds fantastic. Great gear shift, beautifully precise. We still have very long ratios, I'll tell you that now. The gear ratios are still very long, a bit longer than I'd like them to be. So second gear, run it all the way out to 8,000 RPM and you're doing 85 miles per hour in second gear, 115 in third. Yeah, really long ratios, but a great gear shift. It's a fantastic powertrain, really good traction. Only in second gear coming out the tight hairpin do you trouble the traction at all. Through this fiddly sequence here up to the blind chicane, the chassis feels fantastic. So composed, so well sorted. I think it's a friendlier car at the limit than the previous Cayman GT4. Not quite so sharp, not quite so aggressive. It's easier to get everything out of it. And then, yeah, with that lighter clutch pedal, lighter steering, out on the road, I think it's going to feel quite different to the previous model. It's so well suited to this fiddly little track. The moment you turn into these quick, committed corners, the car feels balanced, settled. It's so transparent, you're not guessing, you're never left wondering if the car's going to grip. It just does every time. So intuitive. It's a mighty thing, this new 718 Cayman GT4, I'll tell you that now. Yeah, good car.
Unsurprisingly then, the Cayman GT4 is fantastic on circuit. So what's the Boxster Spyder like out on the road?
Now then, Boxster Spyder. The great thing about this car and the Cayman GT4 being identical beneath the skin is that all of my driving impressions that I share with you now relate to the GT4 as well. And the good news is, it's brilliant. Mostly. Let's talk first about the chassis, the handling, the ride, all that stuff, the way it steers, because there's just so much to love about this car's chassis. It feels beautifully balanced through these corners. There's such resolute body control. It's agile, it feels light, it drives beautifully. The steering is good as well. Just like I said with the Cayman GT4 on track, it's super accurate, really good natural rate of response, predictable, you can position the car exactly where you want it. The latest Porsche GT cars have sacrificed just a little bit of that fluidity over a cresting three-dimensional road for a bit more control, a bit more immediacy. It's certainly true of the 911 GT3, absolutely true of the 911 GT3 RS, and it is true here as well. So while this car does still feel beautiful over this road, there's also more control, more connection with the road surface than there has been, say, with the previous Cayman GT4, but it still works beautifully. On a dry and reasonably warm day like this one, the tyres generate so much grip. It just feels like they'll never let go in terms of cornering grip. The front end is absolutely nailed on. And of course, there's really strong traction as well. These cars and the GT4 as well, they've got Porsche torque vectoring differentials. They're mechanical limited slip differentials. And as you drive away from a corner, you're not particularly aware of it doing it, but it is driving that outside rear wheel just to pull the car around the corner. And it also means that you've got bundles of traction, so you can lean on the rear axle really hard. It's such a cohesive, well-rounded chassis. Exactly what we expect from those guys at Porsche Motorsport. But there are a couple of frustrations, I have to say. I didn't mind the way the Cayman GT4 sounded. In fact, I thought it sounded pretty good. Quite a raspy soundtrack. But now that I'm driving the Boxster Spyder and there's no roof, you hear the soundtrack much more clearly, and it's just slightly muted. It's because of those gasoline particulate filters. It's just muffling the soundtrack. It's so noticeable. It's a bit like Tom Jones trying to sing through a bull gag. Ugh. Certainly from where I'm sitting right now, it just sounds a little bit flat. Let's have a few seconds of just engine sound. Gear shift is fantastic. Such a sweet, short, direct, snappy throw. I love it. I don't love the gear ratios. In fact, I'm really frustrated by them. They're so long. Porsche will have its reasons for giving it these massive, rangy gear ratios, but it's just frustrating. Maybe it's to do with emissions and fuel consumption. Maybe it's to do simply with the cost of developing a whole new set of ratios. I don't know, but it is frustrating out on the road, just as it is on track. And it means that unless you're absolutely wringing the engine out every gear, the car doesn't really come to life. You need 5,000 RPM on the motor before it really starts ringing. And in second gear, 5,000 RPM, you're pretty much at the national speed limit. So there are a couple of frustrations with this car. The soundtrack that just isn't quite tuneful enough. The ratios that are still too long. But all things considered, it's fantastic to drive. Now let me show you the way the roof works, because it's slightly odd. Now the roof on the standard Porsche Boxster could not be more straightforward. It's one button, hold it for 10 seconds or so, and the roof is up or down. So straightforward, couldn't be easier. This one's a touch fiddly. First thing you have to do, pull the button, give that a flick. That pops the cover at the back here, and you lift it all the way up. That reveals the hood hiding away just above the engine. Now by hand, you have to lift it out, drag it into position, and then just leave it resting there. Next step, lower this cover without slamming it shut yet. Leave it there. Now this is the slightly fiddly bit. You have to find a little button that's hiding away within the canvas to pull these sections down. It's not entirely straightforward. There we go. Now over to the other side, do the same again. Probably gets easier the more you do this, but first time it's not that straightforward. That goes in there. Now we can latch this properly. That's all done. Back inside. There we go. Roof done. What was that? That was a good minute, wasn't it? What do you think though? That's how it looks with the roof up. I think it looks pretty cool actually. So that's how the roof goes up. Now, a couple of points to make about the roof. The hood is actually just a very thin single piece of canvas, so it's not insulated like a standard Boxster's roof is. I suppose ultimately this Spyder is designed to be used in sunny climates where you know you're going to take the roof down first thing in the morning and only put it up again when you're finished driving for the day. It's perhaps not ideally suited to the British climate, but there we go. I think the car looks cool enough with this sculptural shape at the back that you can live with the slightly fiddly hood. So how do we sum up then? That's the new 718 Cayman Gt4 and the new 718 Boxster Spyder. This particular car, the Spyder, has a very different character to the previous Boxster Spyder. That car wasn't a Porsche Motorsport car, this new one is, so it has a much more focused, much harder edged character to it, whereas the previous one was much more easygoing. Now what about the Cayman Gt4? Well, I have to say all of this with the caveat that I haven't yet driven it on the road, so I can't say for certain what it's like to drive on the road, but I have to say I haven't been blown away by it yet. Out on the circuit, it was fantastic to drive, every bit as thrilling for me as the previous Cayman Gt4 was on the track. But there are just a couple of things about the car that apply to this one as well that are just a little bit irritating. So the soundtrack, it's not as rich and as tuneful as we'd like it to be. The gear ratios are really long and they're frustrating out on the road. I think when a car is otherwise brilliant, but it's got one flaw, you can overlook it. When a car is brilliant, but it's got a handful of little flaws, it's difficult to overlook all of them, and they kind of frustrate you, they irritate you. That's true of this car, it's true of the Cayman Gt4, particularly the Cayman actually, because there is a sense as well that it's lost some of that single-minded purpose. It's a slightly more well-rounded car. So I need a little bit more time in that car. Would I If I had an original Cayman GT4, would I be in a hurry to upgrade to the new one? No, I wouldn't. I think that's probably the key point. Perhaps if I was using it as my everyday car, I would. But if it was a weekend car, right now, I think I'd be staying in the previous shape one. So there we go. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time to comment below, and all your comments on our previous videos as well. I really appreciate them. Thank you for your kind thoughts. Please hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you aren't already. And remember, go to PistonHeads.com. You'll be able to read my written reviews of the Boxster Spyder and the 718 Cayman GT4. Thank you very much. Goodbye.